Peace and welcome to Atlantis Build Talk Radio, the premier station for 5% Nation of Gods and Earth social commentary, interviews, musicology, and uncensored discussions about the science of everything in life. This station is a subsidiary of Asia and the Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters at www.atlantischool.blogspot.com and Asia TV at YouTube/Quanaya. QUANAAH.
Inside the studio, we said today we're going to have a special guest inside the studio. We're going to be talking about the movement, the travel of African people, black people in America, African Americans traveling to America, to Africa, all around the planet. We're going to try to get into as much as we can in these next few segments. I'd like to welcome to the show Brother Saladin Allah, and I want you all to listen very close because we're gonna go back in history as Bunny Wailer's talking about Rise and Shine. We're gonna talk about where the records of his family have risen from, and many of you might have heard about this, but we have living connections right here in our midst.
Peace, brother. How you doing?
I'm well. Welcome to Project Access to Africa. I'm just happy and excited to have such a one as yourself in the studio. You know, I think it's going to be a very beautiful and enlightening time for each other, and I think it's going to help the spirits of all of those who are listening.
Thank you. I'm just happy to be here and just have an opportunity to share.
All right. Well, listen, it's so much to talk about, and I really want to give people more glimpses of who you are and what energy you bring to the world at this time, and what energy is even flowing through you, because we're a summation of those beings that have deposited into us as well too. So I took my children out on Friday to Niagara Falls. So
yeah, absolutely.
Let's open up the door. Let everybody walk in.
Yeah. So tell you a little bit about my background. I'm a director of community engagement at the Niagara Falls Underground Railroad Heritage Center. I'm one of about 300 people that helped establish that institution, and it's the first black institution that's been established in our city in the last 30 years. So we take a lot of pride in that, especially with sharing and highlighting the history of our people and our communities in the city of Niagara Falls. I got into this work because I'm an actual descendant of a famous Underground Railroad freedom seeker by the name of Josiah Henson. The famous novel Uncle Tom's Cabin that was written by Harriet Beecher Stowe. She used his life as the central narrative for that story.
And for those who might not remember, or for those who might have heard it, give us like a little bit about what she was communicating about your ancestor. What was happening in this story?
Well, that book, it was the best-selling novel of the 19th century, and it was the first time that slavery in this country was actually put on public display. Prior to that, if you were in the South or you were in the Midwest and other different places where slavery was happening, you knew exactly what was taking place, right? But just the larger mass of people, they may have not known just the full extent of what was actually happening with that system. And she was the first person to actually put it on public display. And a lot of people didn't like it because now it's exposing in terms of the way in which that system works. So copyright laws are not the same today as they were back then. So you had a lot of people striving to discredit her, writing articles in newspapers, doing stage plays, changing the entire narrative of who Uncle Tom actually was. And to this day, when we hear that phrase Uncle Tom, a lot of us are disassociated from it. We won't want anything to do with it, not knowing what's actually behind it. The same way that same propaganda was created in terms of our people on the continent of Africa, the same way that same propaganda was created for our freedom fighters here in America. It was designed to keep us from looking behind that veil. And he's the actual story behind who Uncle Tom was. He led a black militia during the rebellion in 1837. He was able to save the lives of over 186 people and found his own community known as the Dawn Settlement, and he built the British American Institute on 200 acres of land in Dresden, Ontario, Canada. And this is a person that you wouldn't associate with being a so-called Uncle Tom. He was a revolutionary.
Very, very interesting. So, so now going back to him coming forward. So, what ended up happening to him, or what did he end up doing in his life?
Yeah, so he eventually made his journey from Owensboro, Kentucky, in his 40s, and it took him and his family a 41-day trek from Owensboro all the way up here to Western New York. He had 4 children with him. 2 were so small he had to carry them in a knapsack on his back that entire journey. He was able to take a boat from Ohio, known as the Schooner Commerce, which docked right here in Buffalo, New York at the foot of ferry at Broderick Park, and he crossed on October 28th, 1830.
Very interesting. So this whole thing about waterways, about traveling, everyone who was enslaved in America did not see it and have this happy, lucky, it didn't affect this kind of reality. And I think that it's important for us to control the narrative so that it's clear, so that our generations know what we have been and still are going through, and why it's important for us to stay as conscious and as awake as possible when others are trying to change the story and the narrative. So, Brother Saladin Allah, so after coming into this Western New York, then what happened?
Well, he crossed over there at Broderick Park, October 28th, 1830. And one of the other aspects of the Underground Railroad that many of our people, especially over here on the American side of the border, don't know much about are the many communities and freedom settlements that we established over on the Canadian side. Josiah and his family lived for about several years in a freedom settlement known as Little Africa, right in Fort Erie. I mean, you can actually go over the border right now and see an unmarked grave of our people right in Fort Erie. We had those communities in places like St. Catharines, known as Colored Village, Queenston, Ontario, Canada, Mississauga, Toronto, Chatham, all across Canada. We had these freedom settlements of our people. And that's a connecting aspect of our story that a lot of times we're not told about. And these were thriving communities of our people, just like we had those same thriving communities of our people here on the American side.
So now, as far as your family, your connection with him, then what ended up happening later on in history?
So my grandmother, Inez Dorsey, she was born through Josiah Henson's family in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And she moved across the border in 1925. So
across the border, meaning coming back
into America.
Okay.
Yeah. So she settled in Niagara Falls, New York. Some of her children, my father was one of her children. Also, my aunt, she actually lived here in Buffalo, New York. And I grew up knowing this part of my ancestry, and it gave me a different sense of self-identity because I knew stories beyond just our enslavement. My father, he taught us about classical African civilization. He collected African artifacts. My mother was a social psychologist. So I grew up with a real sense of consciousness culturally and a sense of social justice at a very early age. So when I got exposed to some of the propaganda about our people, I knew it was alive.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting because one, not many people get a chance to grow up with someone telling them the truth early in life, and then second, being able to have the icons throughout African American history, African history of this Western world, and having direct lineage ties to those who made such a big difference for themselves and others. Yeah. So where can people find you at? What are you normally doing, or what's one of your jobs where the public can interface with you?
So one of the things, I'm a director of community engagement at the Niagara Falls Underground Railroad Heritage Center. I'm also public projects coordinator for the public art within the city of Niagara Falls. And
where and what has that yielded so far? Because if you are around those areas, for those who might not have seen it, what is that public project looking like?
So we have a number of murals that we've done in the city of Niagara Falls. All of them are community based. And that's something that I take pride in, a lot of great pride in, because a lot of times when people are are doing projects, they have the tendency to try to build it from the top down, where you got people making all the decisions at the top and the people at the bottom are not at the table because they're usually on the menu. And all of the projects that we're invested in our community involves the community, which makes sure that there's a sense of ownership, a sense of voice, and a sense of protection over what that project actually is. So usually throughout the week, over at the Niagara Falls Underground Railroad Heritage Center, if people are not familiar with the location, it's right connected to our Amtrak station. It's 825 Depot Avenue West. We have freedom conversation tours that we do. Right now we just switched to our fall hours, which are Wednesday through Sunday, and we have those tours that are free along with your admission every day at 11:30 and at 2 p.m.
So people are still riding the Amtrak now. So there's people actually coming in the station. Public transportation is taking place there. There's also a subtle international bridge crossing there. So that is another continued, as in history, it's a continued place where a lot of traffic is coming through there. Historically, what was that building?
Yeah, so that building was a customs house of the 1860s. Prior to that customs house being built in the 1860s, that location, which is the foot of, today we know it as the Whirlpool Bridge, was the first international suspension bridge. And that was the name of the actual community where that bridge actually was. It was a very important location. William Still, in his documents, consistently wrote about Suspension Bridge being a rendezvous point for freedom seekers. And Harriet Tubman was one of those freedom seekers that crossed in that location in November of 1856.
Well, give thanks, so far so good, you know.
Well, I think that's that's interesting. So now there's living history, the murals, people from all over America, people from all over different parts of this country, all over the world, who are coming to Niagara Falls. They are getting a dose of our history, past, present, and more than likely some future things. So what else are you doing as far as educating the community? We're going to take a break.
Yep.
What else are you doing as far as education?
So I've been teaching for about 20 years. I've had the opportunity to establish my own early childhood learning center within the last year. Known as the Atlantis School. Thank you. Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters. And working with youth from various different age groups. As a black man, I thought it was important for me to be accessible to our children as early as possible in their growth and development, and that is early childhood development, because you're actually invested in constructing their brain architecture and sending them on not only an academic or an educational trajectory, but also a cultural trajectory, because many students can go through their whole educational career and never see me as a black man within that classroom.
And that makes a difference when it comes to authority, when it comes to confidence, when it comes to even having an interaction of somebody that becomes familial and not just someone that you have to listen to or follow instructions from, and they're not really feeling you. And I think that is really one of the main things that are happening with a lot of our young people. They can feel if the instructors love them, respect them, care for them, or expect the best.
And live in their community.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times, you know, these children have teachers they don't see every day. They see me at the grocery store. They see me on a basketball court. I am a part of your community.
We could do a whole show on that alone, but we're gonna be coming back. This is Ras Jomo, brother Saladin Allah. We're gonna go deeper into this travel, and we're gonna start talking about some global travel and some things that this time is allowing more and more in our community the ability to do. You all stay tuned. Project Access to Africa